2 years ago, I won this primary with 73% of the vote. I could easily have done the same again. The path was clear. But it would have required that I go along with President Trump's lie about the 2020 election. It would have required that I enable his ongoing efforts to unravel our democratic system and attack the foundations of our republic.
What you just heard was the end of yet another congressperson's career at the hands of Trump and his allies. This past Tuesday, Republican Congresswoman and January 6th Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney of Wyoming lost her primary election to Trump-endorsed Harriet Hageman. Now, Liz Cheney is just the latest in a string of House Republicans to lose her primary after voting to impeach former President Donald Trump for inciting a deadly riot at the Capitol on January 6th. Now, this is despite allegiance to Trump during his time in office. Cheney voted with Trump 92.9% of the time. Congressman Tom Rice voted in line with his agenda 94.1% of the time. Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler, almost 80% of the time. The exception is Congressman Peter Meijer, who did not take office until January 3rd, 2021, and the only 3 votes he cast while Trump was president were to reject his election lies and to finally impeach him. Now, Meijer's first term is also his last. I want you to remember this when Trump's allies tout his so-called doctrine. The allegiance is not to border security, it's not to religious freedom, and it certainly is not to law and order. It is to a man, one single, dangerous man. And that devotion may very well reshape not just our Congress, but the very core of who we are as a nation after this November. So here to discuss is my political panel. Democratic strategist Xochitl Hinojosa is here with us. Former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo of Florida is here. And Matthew Brown is still with us in the chair on set, back with us. Okay, Congressman, I want to start with you. We just played some of Liz Cheney's concession speech, and it is the most defiant, I think, concession speech I have ever heard. A concession speech is a speech you've had to give before in 2018. And you warned against Trumpism when you later reflected on your loss. What did it feel like to watch Liz Cheney giving her speech, especially when we talk about the future of the Republican Party?
Well, honestly, I was proud of Liz Cheney because she said the truth. And she said that she was unwilling to compromise her principles and her integrity in order to win an election. And that's what so many Republicans have to do these days, Simone. They have to accept Donald Trump's lies. They have to defend Donald Trump at all costs, or at the very least, they have to stay quiet and not criticize him. And for Liz Cheney, it just wasn't worth it. And I think it shouldn't be worth it for anyone. I mean, staying in power, sure, there are a lot of benefits to that. And perhaps some people say, well, Liz Cheney didn't have to be an all-out martyr the way she was, but there is something to say for keeping your honesty, keeping your integrity. And I actually think Liz Cheney is going to be a lot more dangerous for Donald Trump now that she's liberated from having to seek re-election. She's going to be fully committed, as she says, to preventing him from reaching the Oval Office. Perhaps that means she runs for president as an independent. Whatever it is, Liz Cheney is fixated in a good way on keeping someone very dangerous from returning to the White House.
You know, Xochitl, this point that the congressman makes is interesting because I want to believe that if we were talking about a former Democratic president, right, that was as unhinged and as dangerous as Donald Trump is, I would not have an issue speaking up and speaking out. And I would hope a number of my Democratic friends wouldn't either. What is going on? What is going on? I think that's just a question many people have. Like, what the heck is going on?
You're right, Simone. And I just want to point to what happened after 2016. When Democrats lost everything, there was a very divided Democratic Party. And we could have sat around and pointed fingers and start trying to figure out and divide ourselves even more about moderates versus the far left, et cetera. But instead, we came together with a unified message around healthcare and ended up winning the House, the Senate, and the White House, as you well know. And the problem with Republicans is that they had the opportunity to do that. They had the opportunity to take a step back, have a fresh look, have a message that resonates with the American people, and try to tackle the midterms. These midterms are theirs to lose. It should be a really tough midterm election for Democrats. And because Republicans have had recruitment failures, and they have also elected in their primaries untested candidates, it is very possible that Democrats hold on to the Senate and potentially even the House. I think the House will be harder, but it is because Republicans have failed to put forward a unified message that resonates with all voters. And instead, there is this inter-party fighting that is going to end up helping Democrats.
Yes, and helping Democrats and hurting our democracy. You know, Matthew, as everybody here knows, I think in my former life, I was a Democratic strategist, a successful one, I might add. But I am someone that has always said that I believe in the systems of this country. I believe that we need two strong political parties. And what does it say about the state of our democracy when Republicans in this country are punished for standing up and telling the truth, for standing up and defending our democracy? Where does that leave us? I mean, you're out here on the democracy beat. What is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just have to underscore, just to give some numbers on this, a recent Washington Post analysis that we did on my team at the Post found that 54 of 87 GOP candidates have won their primaries who deny the results of the 2020 election and who spread election conspiracy theories. So this is something that is quite popular in the Republican Party right now and that really still has a hold, not just in the elite corners of the party, but also very much at the grassroots. So this is a very concerning thing, not just because of people not believing in true facts here, but also for why. And really, we need to understand the roots of this question and why so many people are attracted to this narrative that has been put out by many GOP leaders, and most notably former President Trump himself. I think that it shows that our country is at the moment incredibly polarized, like incredible lack of trust in institutions ranging from not just the media, but to in any portions of civic life, including government, including corporations, and that atomization, that fracturing of our social fabric, I think is making it so that a lot of people can come in and when you're interested in power, you can simply assert yourself in a way that is incredibly receptive to large swaths of this country, unfortunately.
It is deeply concerning. I want to make sure we talk about this Cook Political Report because it speaks to something Sochi just said. And the Senate, Cook Political Report, who is, they are very conservative with their estimates. These are the folks that want to get it right. They say Senate control is a toss-up between Democrats and Republicans in November. And it seems to me that now even Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is singing that same tune. I want you all to hear what he had to say.
I think there's probably a greater likelihood the House flips than the Senate.
This is certainly an unusual moment of candor from the minority leader. Sochi, you spoke to this. I just want to ask you, you've got Mehmet Oz, you've got Herschel Walker. Some of these folks are election denying, conspiracy theorists. Many of these people are not qualified to hold office. These folks have not put up their best and brightest. My Republican friends, they missed the boat this year. What's going on?
Well, that's right. And what Cook Political Report is saying is that Democrats have better paths and more options to get to a majority than Republicans have right now, which is surprising because that was not the case a few months ago. We were talking about how in many of these states, Democrats were in trouble, but because of the recruitment failures and because Democrats have established themselves in these states as trusted leaders who have delivered, you might end up having Dems come out on top in November. And that's what I'll be keeping my eye out on. And I actually agree with Mitch McConnell. It's because of recruitment failures.
Sochi, they're telling me I have to go after and interrupt you. Look, I think that the Senate is in play. Congressman Curbelo, do you think the Democrats are winning the House? Maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
Right now, I wouldn't bet on Democrats keeping the House, but I can tell you that it looks a lot better for them than it looked a few weeks ago. We got all these terrible Republican candidates in some of these districts, and to give Democrats some credit, they are on a little bit of a win streak here. They were against the ropes for all of last year and for some of this year, and now they have some momentum.
All right, now Nancy Pelosi is listening. Matthew Brown, Sochi Hinojosa, and former Congressman Carlos Curbelo, thank you all very much.